you're looking at this meta and going, oh, cool, Genji dives back. Maybe not quite so much these days. We're seeing a lot of double shields, so the nuke from the D.Va, not likely to be in the offing. But, Moxie, let's bring it back for a second. You're quite right to say Genji, very heavily prevalent in the meta in the minute. What is it about that? What is it that he brings that why we're seeing so much of this at the minute?
So you actually hit the nail on the head when we always talk about conversations with Genji. A couple of times ago, you talked about him and he was just a blade bot, right? Yeah. So in the days of old Overwatch, you just built up that ultimate, you had an Ana in your pocket, you were on comms together, Nano comes through, your ultimate comes out, and you walk away with the game and a play of your game under your belt. No more do you need the Nano. Genji mains rejoice. You do not have to bribe a support player into sticking with you for an entire game for you to find value, because what the changes Blizzard have done, upping his damage, reducing the distance that he needs to have value for. And not only that, allowing deflect now to be cancelled, which means if you know how to deflect a widow shot, you can still go back to doing a majority of DPS instead of just sort of holding two swords there, hoping that someone shoots at you or someone fire strikes. And it basically means that a Genji Blade, you don't need the Nano, you don't really need anything other than the rest of your team making sure that something like a Transcendence or an Immortality field isn't in the way for your ultimate to find value.
Yeah, we're finally back into the region of Overwatch where the tanks are making space and they're not making space for themselves with the damage. They're finally making space for specifically Genji to the damage. But Moxie, I feel like we've gotten a little bit of ahead of ourselves. We've gotten deep into the lesson and the lecture on Overwatch, but we've neglected to tell the good people what it is we've got for them today. And of course, myself and Moxie are going to be here for the first 2 matches today, 4 coming your way, all told. And this first one of the set is going to be Regen playing against, I believe it's Bayer and Everyone, better known as BNE. So Moxie, why don't you tell us a little bit about these teams?
Okay, so Regen, these are a team that we've actually got to witness firsthand for, I think, a little bit while ago. Cast your mind back. There was the Forsyth Cup that we had here at Eloha. Monkey Bubble, I believe, were the ones who helped put that one together. And they came, I think it was 4th in that, but a little bit more recently, because obviously that was before patch changed and Genji came back. So pretty much a different team lineup, at least when it comes to those heroes that you're going to be seeing. I got to see these guys in Solstice tournament last week, about halfway through. And yeah, compositions, they're weird, they're wacky, but they work a lot of Junkrat to just burst down those shields. Then you take something like an Ashe or a Genji that's going to find value once those shields are down, because really it's all about the tanks at the moment, just sort of clearing the stage to allow the DPS to go for that last hurrah and actually pick up value rather than just dinking Shuriken into an Orisa Insignia shield.
I think that's an interesting point you bring up. We seem to be dealing a lot with this double shield meta, despite the breakable barriers event however many months ago that was. And the Junkrat is a really interesting tool for this, because at 130 damage on a standard primary fire projectile from a Junkrat, there is nobody better suited in the game for chunking down the shields. But it will take a little bit of time for that to happen. And, maybe the Junkrat isn't in as meta a position as we'd maybe like for this. But if what you're saying is true and Regen are going to be coming out with it, then who knows? That could be a wrinkle in the plans of BNE. And to bring this back to our teams again, BNE, unfortunately for both myself and for you, Moxley, not a team that we're particularly familiar with. So kind of up in the air as to how this is going to go just yet. We still need to see what happens when the rubber meets the road for BNE.
Well, they do say that their favorite composition is double shields, and we know that that first map should be popping up as Li Zhang, which means if it's Control Center, Junkrat, he's not really as high up in the meta as we like to someday hope that he will be. Everyone adores to see the Junkrat, because spaces, open space, a fight happens there, Junkrat loses pretty much all of his value. You can't have that spam damage going through. But Control Center, a place where you try and take control of all of these small cramped up corridors and hold at chokes, Junkrat is pretty much designed for it. In fact, he fits in there just as perfectly as any Mei main right now.
I think, I'm a little bit older than you, Moxie, so I can cast my mind back a little bit further. But, back in the early days of Overwatch, when things were broken down in the DPS category into attacking and defensive heroes, and in theory you were supposed to pick attacking heroes when you're on offense and defensive heroes when you're on defense. Junkrat slotted very firmly, very comfortably into that defensive role. Just the ability to control a choke and spam bombs down that and just completely decimate that entire line of approach is not a thing that you can underestimate, but he's too easy to outflank. I think there are too many options in there, and maybe we'll see Regen come out with this, but BNE don't have to do much adapting to get around that problem. I think that's a solved problem. Like, people know how to deal with a Junkrat. Like, a good enough hit scan is just going to take that Junkrat straight out of the fight.
Yeah, and I think that's why we see Junkrat on very small parts of the map where it will be something like a control point, but it's only one of the 3 control maps in play. So if something like Gardens pops up, then you're not going to be seeing the Junkrat. You're probably going to be seeing the Pharmacy up in the sky, because Pharmacy is still as prevalent as it was back in ye old days of Overwatch, because you have that aerial control. Sometimes we see Echo try to rise to the challenge, but you don't have that constant 24/7 pocket rammed into your backside to keep you up and alive. Not like how the Pharah, she takes one hit, she just heals straight back up, and then she 2-taps you straight in the head, and off you go to spawn.
I saw an argument made by, I think it might even have been Aquamarine, who is the Junkrat one trick that plays for Avoided, who we'll be seeing in our second round of games today, that there's an argument that says actually a pocketed Junkrat is maybe even so far as broken when you think of the 30% damage boost that you get from the Mercy Blue Beam on top of that. So that's certainly an option that we can see them look at in this opening round. But it looks like we're getting about ready to go into our first map. It's not going to be Control Center, where we were theorizing that we might see the Junkrat come into play. It looks like it's going to be opening up on Night Garden, Moxie.
Yeah, so this is going to be Night Market, which means both of these guys should be locking in the Symmetra. Because if you go up against a team that doesn't have a Symmetra and you find yourself running afoul of those turrets already being set up on that point, it doesn't matter what you're running. Dive, double shielding, Reinhardt, Zarya, you are never going to be able to be alive long enough to get past those front doors.
Well, it looks like we have those Symmetra picks locked in already. One of the few maps where you see the Symmetra run all the way to the point and not just for that early boost out of spawn on a control map. And looks like we've got almost level pegging. We've got the mirror matchup coming out for these guys. Obviously, spawn doors a good 7 seconds away from opening, so a lot could change. But no, it is the mirror matchup. This should be an interesting one, Moxie.
Yeah, so whoever gets to win this first fight gets to keep the Symmetra. And so you are going to see these guys fight tooth and nail until the last player for control.
Well, that's going to be the opening salvo. Maywall's now up for both teams. Looks like slightly better turret placement coming out for Regen, but no kills available online just yet. Both Immortality Fields down. We're going to see Den here looking for some kind of value. Lava's going to get traded out there, and it's going to be anything that's going to start things off with the kill onto the Reinhardt. And this is an incredibly messy fight to open things up, but this is the way this goes on Control sometimes. The freeze doesn't come through in time, and it's going to be Chopper with the high charge that really opens this up for Regen. They get to hold on to the Symmetra, Moxie.
But Regen, they use that amplification matrix from CJ in that fight, and Base is going to be coming into his own on this next one. So if you're BNE, you do have a small window of opportunity, but Regen, they still have that Lucio in play, right? They can just disengage with that speed boost and wait that ultimate out. So if you're BNE, you can't use it on main, you've got to use it on point where this team can't run away from.
Of course, Magic Mateball slightly ahead in terms of an ult charge here, ready for the next fight. So we'll have that sound barrier ready to counter something. Wow, 2 walls out. It's going to be very hard to get through both the Mei wall and the Symmetra, even with that amplification matrix. Beautiful counter there, really. They can only get the fire strike through, but it will take Magic Mateball out of the fight, who's closing in on having that sound barrier ready to go. Lava goes for the Shadow 2 on the ground, but with the Immortality Field in play, there are no kills out of it just yet. It buys the space for the freeze to come online. The Blizzard, the Snow Globe is on the field. The damage is there in spades. They're all locked down, and it's down to Chopper and Scruff to take this fight away.
But it's a heavy commitment again from Regen when it comes to ultimates. They put in the Shadow, they put in the Blizzard, and BNE, again, like the same story with the amplification matrix, they're going to have a Blizzard of their own. And so you can have a very small place where you have to chunk down the supports first. Magic Mabel's too close to that sound barrier to keep alive for the Blizzard to find value.
Let's go with the Blizzard and the sound barrier. Don't we somehow up on the high ground for that one? Jumped up by the Mei wall, and it's going to be Dente in the back, going toe-to-toe with CJ, and coming off the worst for it, but a massive boot coming out from Micro, kind of a macro boot more likely, and additional damage into the pit coming out from Dusk to round things out for BNE. We got almost all the way to last fight territory for Regen, and BNE swing it back around in their favor.
Well, Chopper is going to be off the Symmetra, and honestly, he's thinking about it. He's flipping for all of these DPSs, a little bit like roulette. Going to be opting into the Reaper, and what that means is a lot less CC. If you'd stuck with the McCree, you'd have the flashbang for Dent Head, but now you're going to be having those double barrel shotguns. Your support lineup is going to be a lot more vulnerable.
Oh, that's an early one, and a shadow out from Lava as well, but they've already lost Chopper, so in a 5v6, it might not be a commitment that they really wanted to make the most of. But I see Denthead looking for some sort of value with the Doomfist here, has the punch back up, ready to go. Interrupt some of the aggression coming into frozen targets, but it's a cool ABC that finds the kill in that exchange. Beautiful wall out from Zib, freezes the Reinhardt away from the rest, freezes the Orisa away from the rest of the team, and knocks them out. This has been a great push back here from Regen. Magic Mateball able to get a kill in there as well. Dunweir coming back to point with the Shadow, ready to go, but his team are already embattled. Wall comes up, protects everybody except Chopper, who is able to get out of it eventually. Dunweir swinging away at the doors, cannot find his way in, being body blocked out. Cool ABC slams the door shut, throws in the blizzard to stop the recon test, but it may be too little, too late. Denthead is able to get two and comes out with the ultimate, but can't survive through this. The tanks here from Regen have kept this alive in stylish fashion for Regen, and they're looking to just get rid of these last few contesters to try and round this out, but somehow BNE have done enough to bring this right the way back.
Micro was able to get that Scienfire online, and even better yet, connected to the floor, so he's allowed to stay alive. And if you can't eject that Lucio, he's just going to stay there on that point, allowing his team chance to get on in, allowing BNE chance to equalize that point percentage.
Well, we're on our way to last fight. So it's going to be Magic 8-Ball starting things off with the aggressive sound barrier. Brings his team a lot of safety into the fight. They've got no ultimates left on the borders, but Magic 8-Ball through the window with the boot. 2 down, 1 more in the kill feed for the triple from a Magic 8-Ball. They get the flip. They've got it up to 99%. And with this Death Blossom online for Chopper, this is going to stop anybody getting in anything meaningful way. And this looks like it's going to be a 1-0 on Lijiang for Regen.
Yeah, BNE, they may be able to touch, but they don't have the ultimates. Not like Chopper's already parceled up Death Blossom.
Well, have got the speed characters back to point, and it's bought time for Dusk to just inch his way back onto the point and drop the supercharger, but that is it. One and done, but 99 to 100 here, a very close opening round.
I mean, I'd be very interested to see what would have happened if BNE had kept Denthead off the Doomfist and onto the Symmetra, because you go for the Doomfist, the same reason why we saw the Tracer getting locked in on that second slot over the Mei, right? You go for it so that you can get back to the fight faster, you can stay on the point longer. But what that means is you're running something that's very feast or famine when it comes to that kill potential. Tracer chips away at health targets, and Doomfist, he's 1 or nothing. You either get someone into a wall and pick up a kill, or you get killed yourself. Heading over to Gardens now, no one currently going for the pharmacy. Denthead thinking that they're going to be running into it, so locking in the McCree a little bit prematurely, which means Cool ABC is going to have free reign on this Mei to find themselves, well, up against Zib on this Tracer, who's not going to have a fun time against that CC.
Well, Regen already up onto point, and I'm surprised that Denthead has seen this and not changed off. It might be a little bit too far committed. He's pressured into the back. Immortality field out early now as well. It's going to go down, and Lava finds the first kill of this exchange. A quick double tap. There's the third, and that is it. BNE going to have to go back to spawn and rethink this one.
So Zib puts a lot of pressure on the other side of the point, but there's just no team left alive to try and capitalize on it, and so Regen, they just ignore the Tracer, deal with the team, and then deal with the DPS. Zip's going to be off and onto the Echo, so you've got a lot more damage constantly being put out, and it's going to really rip through that double shielding Regen are running. But Cool ABC is already 95% up to that Blizzard, and he's going to be down to Basil with that Immortality field to block it all.
It's going to be a nice wall. Doesn't quite get the separation they might have liked, but it has allowed Magic 8-Ball to get another environmental kill on the roster, and with a quick dip into the pond, that's going to be the hard reset for BNE.
And Regen didn't even use the most valuable ultimate. They used Amplification Matrix, something that you get back so quickly. You're still holding on to this Blizzard. BNE are trying to avoid it just by being mobile. So they're swapping onto the Winston Pharmacy, going to be coming out, so it's going to catch very few members of the team. pretty much just Baser and Dusk, but that's still value, that's still a tank and a support for your troubles.
Honestly, it's amazing that they're continuing to come over the bridge because Magic Mateball is clearly playing for these environmental kills. Ship's able to get Dusk as well. Like, just guys, have a look at your pathing. Stop coming over that bridge because there are at least 2 abilities there to stuff up that approach.
Dusk is going to be off the Sigma and on to the D.Va, so you'll have those boosters if you do try to go off the map, but that still means that Base is going to be very vulnerable, and they're still trying to push this bridge.
Yeah, and of course, nearly a full reset for BNE. No ultimates to speak of on the board, and a slack handful coming online for Regen, including the Blizzard. They have finally got a touch onto the point, but running a Tracer into the May is going to be a frosted reception. 9 times out of 10, Cooler ABC able to take them down. Blizzard to trap off the retreat here. Will also see the Ice Block coming out. And at 92%, it's not looking great for BNE.
They don't have anything really that they can race towards an ult charge either to try and secure themselves this next fight in the overtime fight.
Well, in the overtime fight, you need the 6v6 to really make this happen. And they lose Denthead. The res will come through, but one more environmental kill onto Dunweir is going to put them right back into that 5v6. Lava still has the Shatter. He's holding on to it. Looks like he's not going to need this here. The Farah attempting to tag into the point to keep this contest going will get the barrage off, but only very briefly. We will see 2 kills coming on board for BNE. Pulse Bomb's going to make that a 3rd. There's the Wrecking Ball to tag back in and keep us alive a little bit longer. And somehow, it's Dented digging deep into the reserves here to bring out yet another kill. Takes Lava out of the fight, coming alive on the Tracer. Recoils back into full health, looking to take that Teleporter and Immortality Field offline. And in the final seconds of the fight, this is looking like BNE have got this flip just about sorted.
Oh, but they still have to deal with Magic Maple, who has the Siren and is waiting for the reinforcements to actually signal to use it.
That's unfortunate. It was a nice tag back in by the speed characters. Cool ABC and Magic 8-Ball, keeping that alive a little bit longer. Lava's going to find one, but it was just too much damage for BNE.
BNE were able to keep the Hammond alive. Dunmere was just spin cycling all the way around that point because Lava actually put in the Shatter to get Micro out of the way. Not to deal with the Hammond, who was just constantly delaying that overtime bar and allowing BNE to get that foot back in through the door. Magic Maple still has the Sign Barrier though, when Chip is approaching that supercharges. If you're BNE, that Sign Barrier is something you need right now because you have nothing to bolster your health bar once the damage amplification comes through.
Quite right, just able to climb back into the mech before being taken out. An aggressive Sound Barrier once more from Magic Maple even. We'll see the Supercharger procced here as well as the Immortality Field goes down. Has allowed them to focus down that mech, but they've got to get out of dodge, and CJ is a little bit too slow to make that adaptation. You see Zib holding onto the barrage here for now as around the 50% marker for BNE, but it's Chopper with a swapper onto the McCree that's going to find the flashbang kill onto Denthead. But so far, it's not enough for them to secure the flip. Right now, BNE can afford to keep a little bit of a toehold in until they get their barrage into play. Ship Cool ABC down. Chopper will find Zib, but it's too little, too late, especially with Dunweir there, with the minefield, with the spin, to keep this alive just that little bit longer.
BNE are tag teaming Chopper right now. He's either dealing with the Tracer or the Fire, and whichever DPS he isn't currently facing is off just stomping through the rest of his team. BNE, they've got those Hammond mines as well. It's going to be approaching this final fight territory for them, so once Regen come calling, you can just drop them all over point and secure yourself that space, allowing Base to put that nano boost onto the Hammond or even onto the Fire to get more value.
Minefield completely stuffs up the entrance. You've now got to sacrifice the Reinhardt shield to try and get in, but Chopper just able to clip match out on the way in. Now into that 5v6 for definite, and their big win condition of the Minefield stopping that recontest is now off the board. Nothing available for Regen yet either, but we will see Denthead get the clip through onto Cool ABC. Chopper going to go down to the melee, and this is looking increasingly difficult for Regen. Looks like we may be going to a 3rd round on Lee Chang here as BNE start to get the kills they need to really round out this team fight. Sound Barrier, one last Hail Mary with Sound Barrier from Magic Mateball to try and keep himself tagged into the point and fighting the good fight. Can't find a way to do it just yet, but with a Doomfist out from Chopper, suddenly the pick potential, well, ramps up massively, but Chopper himself getting picked out. Zib doing far too much work on the Farah up in the sky, free from the confines of the Reinhardt Earth Shadow. Lava himself going down after that. There's the D-Mech as well, and This has been one long, slow brush of a cleanup for BNE, but they have finally got it.
So Chopper has to go into the Doomfist just to try to get back in, because McCree is many things, but he's not mobile. He can't roll over the moat and get to the point, not like a Doomfist can punch his way through. And as soon as you take away the CC of that flashbang, suddenly the pick potential for Zib and 10 head goes absolutely through the roof, and those DPS get free reign completely unchecked. But this is Control Center. This is where we thought that we would see the Junkrat come out from Regen. It's already what they're locking in. And BNE, they don't have a Zarya. They've got a Junkrat of their own, but neither of these teams are going to be benefiting from having the Junkrat up against them. If you're a Zarya, you've got the trade-off of he charges up your beam like no tomorrow, you get to do so much damage, but if you're Sigma, your shield is shattered within seconds.
Well, we're going to be looking then for which of these two Junkrats has the higher level of mechanical skill just to get that raw fragging potential. Going to be Chopper on the high ground with this team for now, but the trap down and a lot of damage into his face from that fire strike. It's going to be done with, I guess, the opener here. Lava now down. Zib rounding 25% of this ult charge already. They're playing very low. They're playing very spread. They're going to wait for Regen to come towards them. I actually hadn't noticed Denthead still here on the Symmetra, trying to set up a defensive nest, and they have managed to get this early point camp, so they can start to nest up here with the Symmetra. They're not out of the woods just yet, though, Moxie.
Well, Zib is just barreling towards that first tire, 50% of the way, 60% shooting up an ult charge, but it's Denthead who's doing the brunt of the damage right now. Fully charged Symmetra, and no one's turning to deal with them.
Yeah, really unfortunate. You cannot for a second turn your back on a Symmetra in these tight corners. That beam at level 3 does so much damage that everybody in any kind of close proximity is going to get dissolved. And they're going to come out of that with a big chunk of their ultimates online.
And not only that, 35% of the point. Regen stayed in that fight for far too long. They refused to give up defeat even after they'd lost it. And they may be coming into ultimates of their own, but they're ultimates that require you to have the space to set up. Sigma Flux Shadow, you have to be close enough, and BNE are not going to allow that to happen.
Going to set amplification matrices up from both teams, and they both rotate out of the way of the opposing amplification matrix, so not a huge amount of value gained there for anybody. Cool ABC will have the Blizzard shortly, but at 50% and climbing, this needs to have something happen to it fairly quickly. Zip on the high ground looking to get that drop down on the Rip Tire. Coming right the way down, finds the triple, and it's going to be Zip pretty much putting a stop to that team fight. Regen, not much of a hope of winning that 3v6, and I think that might even be the team kill bell.
I think that's my favorite 2-0 ultimate I've ever seen with a tire. No more Graviton, just give me Gravitic Flux every time. They couldn't do anything about it. Immortality Field from CJ had already come through to try to cushion the team's fall when they hit the floor, and Zip just sends the tire and gets a free K. If you're Regen, it's the final fight. You've got a Blizzard, you've got a Shatter, and you can have Chopper's tire to follow up, but first you've got to get Beta out of the way.
There's the Shatter. Looks like it's not really found too much, but Magic Mate Ball on the point. That was Dunweir's coming out there. The Blizzard is now out and on the point. Oh, that's unfortunate. Chopper's Rip Tire meets a fiery end. Lava throws the Shadow right into the waiting shield of Dunweir, and with all those ultimates expended, suddenly Regen don't have a whole lot left to play with. It's going to be down to raw fragging potential here. They've got most of the point capped at this point, but Zib away in the background, uncontested, unchallenged, unmitigated damage and chaos coming out from the Junkrat player is going to see BNE take the first round, 1-0 for them with Lijiang under the belt. And interestingly, Moxie, this is what chat predicted. Chad were looking at a BNE win here.
Well, we're going to get to see Micro's play of the game as well. And this has got to be a boop on Night Market, surely. We got to see so many environmental kills on this map. I think we're going to see him through the window. He's waiting for it. He's waiting for it. He sees a chance, and there he strikes. Off your 2 DPS go. But I think we get to really talk about how BNE were able to win that so dominantly, because it's a completely different story on Night Market and Gardens, where we see that such a close score, 99 to 100%. On Control Center, it's 0 to 100. And it's because BNE invested so much in letting the Junkrat find value. Each of those tires was set up by the rest of the team, whereas Regen, when Chopper tries to tie, it's that frantic, frenzied, oh, I've got to ult now, we need to have something turn around for us, puts the tire in, and only after the tire's been destroyed by that fire strike do we see the Shatter come through. In those instances, Taya can be huge, but you have to lay the foundations for it to be that huge. You have to put Shatter in first and treat it like the Rein Diva combination, right? Shatter Diva Bomb, instead of just Taya and then Shatter a couple of seconds later.
And I wonder, Moxie, if part of that was Regen kind of overstaying their welcome in some of those fights. Riptire, if you're playing your Junkrat right, is a ridiculously quickly charging ult. You can have 3 or 4 of those in a round of control easily, and we just saw the one coming out from Chopper, and I wonder if really we shouldn't have seen a little more gumption from these guys in getting these ults out first and playing a little more quickly, a little more aggressively.
Yeah, and because they overstayed, not only did they kind of feel it when it came to point percentage, BNE got to run away with ultimate economy as well. Because they were the ones who were just constantly peppering damage in, poking away at all of Regen's health bars, cleaning up ultimate after ultimate after ultimate for when Regen came in, eventually for each of these really quite long drawn out slugfests of a point contest, but it looks like we're going to be headed to, well, the map that everyone picks when it's hybrid. Nothing else matters. It's only King's Row, King's Row, or King's Row.
Those are, in fact, the only legal options, I believe. The last time somebody tried to pick a map that wasn't King's Row for the hybrid, well, we're better off not talking about what happened to them. But just a note on the format, guys. All maps currently in rotation, and it's going to be loser pick. So this is Regen's map choice, which suggests perhaps one of two things. Either they've done the scouting, they know what BNE like to run here, or they've got their own pet composition or a good record here, and so they've picked that map to really help them out here. Moxie, King's Row, what are we really looking at here? What's the meta say at the minute?
So meta, at least when it comes to defending, has actually shifted quite a lot. Gone are the days where you would try to hold it, choke, and punish people, separate them out with a Maywall. No more. Now you take high ground. And there are 2 approaches that you can do that. You can either have the entirety of your team just set up on that corner above point, or you can split it. You can have that point presence with something like Anarissa and Batiste, who can go from the high ground to the low ground extremely easily with those exo boots. You've got something like a Sigma and an Ashe pucked up on the corner where normally the rest of the team sit, spamming in damage. You get really nice LOS for accretions and dynamites and so much that the Ashe can do that she pretty much has Bob by the time that the team are actually able to move on to point, because there's a risk with having everyone set up on that corner. Isn't there, Phil? And that's everyone just ignores you and moves on to point, and you're suddenly forced to be in a horrible position of you either give up ticks or you drop down and fight a fight that you're really unprepared for.
I think there was a time for King's Row where we used to see that high ground position played with an Orisa and a Diva, with the Diva there explicitly just to tag onto the point to stop the tick actually flipping over to your opponent so you can keep the high ground position. Diva is not seeing a lot of playtime at the minute, so I feel like it's no longer quite a viable strategy, and you've just got to rely on that raw fragging potential that you were talking about, having the value from the Ashe to really find something to work out here. So if you guys were coming into this one looking for that classic Reinhardt Zarya that we sort of have come to think of King's Row as being emblematic of, I'm afraid Moxie's probably got it about right here. It's going to be double shield, and it's probably going to be an Ashe. I think it's just too strong at the minute.
Yeah, if you want to see Zarya and Reinhardt, just go catch a VOD from a couple of months ago, or even weeks, because it's been a very fast change. Sometimes we see when changes come onto live that these sort of tiptoe movements away from all of this, but no, in about the space of a week, it suddenly went from everyone tries to just hold it, choke, or hold around statue to let's take a vacation. Let's go onto the high ground and send the attacking team a postcard wishing that they were currently here. Because it used to be, right, you would run the Reinhardt Zarya or you could go for the dive. And now if you go for the dive and you go for that high ground, you find yourself being bombarded by an Ashe, an Immortality Field, a Sigma Rock, and a Reinhardt Hammer, or Orisa just swinging through your face.
I feel like the only time we ever see dive is where we've had one team come out with a dive that's got a lucky pick, and then the other team have gone, well, okay, they're running dive. What are we going to do? Let's run counter dive, and they pick up their own dive tanks, their own dive DPS. And I feel like we've never seen it be like everybody's first choice of that mirror matchup. It always seems to default to the double shield mirror matchup, which again, probably what we're going to expect coming out from our 2 teams here. I think, given that we started off this broadcast, Moxie, saying, oh man, it's such a good time to be a Genji main, to be everybody's favourite cybernetic weeb, we've not seen any of him so far today. Do we think we might see some here?
Perhaps, and that's only if a team really wants to commit to annoy the Batiste. Because that's the thing, right? Genji can be extremely strong, but he's still extremely squishy. And so you want to have something like a Brigitte at the moment who can pump him full of armor packs and send him on his merry way. But Genji's main job is always going to be going for the backline, and if you're running a composition that is very heavily based on denying a frontline existence before it moves and steals the supports, Genji still doesn't really have a place.
That's unfortunate, but still potentially many, many more maps to come today where we may see a little more Genji. But as we move over into King's Row, we're just a fraction of a minute away from seeing what we're going to get out on the defense here. And, well, shut my mouth. Is this a defensive Genji that we've got coming out from Chopper?
Well, they are on the defending side, so they can't go for the bait and switch, which means Chopper is going to be committing to it. But notice the support lineup. You don't have an Ana. And so it's going to be up to Magic Maple. A lot of armor packs are going to be going to Chopper. That's a lot of resources. And that means that your front line is going to be just a little bit dry. Or worse yet, CJ. Because if BNE come out with what they're currently running, which is Tunmir on this Winston, and just swapping over to this D.Va, the backline is going to be extremely pressured down in every single one of these engagements.
Interesting offensive lineup here. It's going to see Denthead looking for the early pick. Won't find it. And I think we're just going to see Zib using the Symmetra to take this high ground up onto the Cinema. And then a swap over onto the Echo. So a couple of different flavors here of the double shield. Zib and Chopper going to be going head-to-head for the differences on their team. And Chopper up on the high ground for now, waiting for the opportune moment to engage in, waiting for that information from his team. Sees the Hulk comes in, goes to the dash, but can't quite connect it. Coming out with 13% of the ult charge here. Maybe not as impactful as he would have liked, but somehow it will round the corner and take Denthead out of it. Goes in for yet another dive. And he's playing incredibly aggressive. He's playing so far from the rest of his team here, Moxie.
He's playing a little bit like an off-tank, though, to keep Lava up and alive, because the Orisa can be very vulnerable if she's left alone. And Regen, half their team is currently up on that high ground, which means the Genji has to provide the aggression to keep attention off Lava.
Gonna see another swap here. Zip's gonna be swapping over onto the Torbjorn, which will certainly discourage Chopper a little bit, but cool ABC gets caught out, can't rotate out of the way of the damage from the team's namesake. So that's a 5v6, and this heavily favors the offensive team. Down goes CJ as well, and suddenly Regen's Genji defense looking like it's more full of holes than a big bowl of Swiss cheese.
Oh, Cool ABC going down first was critical for BNE, because Cool ABC was doing so much on that high ground. They go down, they can't send that ultimate in. Bob can't come through to provide the aggression that we get to see now.
Well, Bob is able to enter the fray, but at the expense of Cool ABC. They may find themselves wanting that one back. It was on a hiding to nothing. 4 minutes, 36 seconds of the time bank as we move into Streets.
Yeah, Regen, they could have used that to try and solidify a place for themselves in Streets, because BNE are going to be pushing forward extremely aggressively, knowing that they don't have to go up against that. And Regen, Chopper's on the Genji, about to hit Blade. You don't have that Ana, but Lava on that Orisa means you can try to commit supercharges and to give it a little bit of extra oomph, but Lava's so far behind in ultimate percentage. And so you're going to be holding on to this Blade for so long, is it really going to be worth the wait?
We were talking earlier, just before this, about trapping Blade and Genjis in a Graviton Surge. Graviton Flux, probably just as good for that one, and they're still holding on to it. It's going to be Ship that opens it up with their own, and that's a quick 2 on the board for Regen. Bob on the field now for Denthead, starting to pressure out Chopper a little bit, but able to get the dash reset onto Baptiste of Bizer, and finally they put the brakes on this cart.
Well, Dusk is still holding on to the Sigma Flux, though. Just as long as Chopper's been holding on to this Blade, you can see he's itching to use it to counter like that Genji ult. And if Lava donates the supercharges to giving it an extra kick, it's going to be extra sweet for the Sigma to delete.
Yeah, being able to get the double here. One ult traded for 2 is pretty good. Oh, but he pulls the trigger that little bit earlier. Immortality Field out, and now Supercharger out for Lava. Chopper pulls out the blade, going fishing, but he's going fishing right into a lake of liquid lava. But he's able to mostly get his way around that with the fancy acrobatics of the Genji. Will trade his life out for the turret. Cool ABC couldn't quite get out of the way of the incoming damage either. So a defensive hold for Regen for now, but it's looking shaky.
Well, they lost too many members in that fight. They've had to give up that prized positioning of choke and pull back to wait for Cool ABC to come back in with Bob. You compare it up with CJ with that amplification matrix. Chopper's gone onto the Hanzo. So a lot more pressure onto this double shielding from BNE. But Base has got an amplification matrix to chop. You don't need to have shields if you can just rip through your opponent's health bar.
It's going to be the first one committed. CJ pops the amplification matrix and forces a rotation out now from BNE. Looks like they're going to be coming around the far side, or maybe even just waiting out this amplification matrix. You might be getting an inclination that they're keeping this low ground position. And that's Chopper, unfortunately, out of the fight, and a bomb right into the face of Dent. Head Gravitic Flux in over the top as well, just for good measure. Makes it a Clay Pigeon shooting range for Cool ABC and Cool ABC's Bob, and another defensive hold for Regen.
And BNE, they've swapped Zib onto the Tracer in that last fight. Ever since Chopper went off the Genji, you didn't have to have the Torbjorn there to constantly deter him coming into your front line or your back line. But that means that you're lacking a lot of damage. The Tracer is either going to get in and get a pick, but even then it's going to be so hard to do with Magic Maple sitting on this Brigitte bouncing CJ.
It's really unfortunate trying to run a Tracer into a heavily armored target. It takes a lot of focus fire to find anything with them. The one thing that Zib has on his side is the ability to quickly reposition, pressure, force angles, maybe even get this immortality field out from CJ. Look at the angles he's being forced to play. Look at the pathing he's being forced to take just to keep himself relevant in the fight. Chopper gives up the low ground for now. Has to take up what is effectively the offensive position here on the card as BNE rotate into the defensive position. This is going to heavily favour them, particularly as they start to come up on some of these ults. The Bob almost there, the Pulse Bomb almost there, the Supercharger there, deployed and ready to go. CJ will have the amplification matrix, throws in the Pulse Bomb, but walks into an arrow from Chopper and gets taken out of the fight. There's the Flux, there's the Bob, there's the Rally. Everybody pressing go all at the same time on these ultimates, ready to go in for the fight. And this is starting to round out a little bit more in favour of Regen. As I say, Dented able to find Magic Maple, but a Bob out from Cool ABC gives them that momentary extra one in the fight. But Cool ABC leaves the fight, finds the waiting mace of Micro, and in the chaos and the confusion, BNE looking like they've managed to push the payload all the way to the start of point C. Great hold from Regen.
Micro was so good on holding on to that rally in just the tail end of the fight, just the moment BNE needed their health bars to be a little bit more cushioned, and Regen lose because they just don't have that sustain on their side. Lava's got a Superchargers, and that's something that you can try to deal up with, especially with Magic Maple going onto the Zenyatta. 30% damage amplification with that Orb of Discord without the Superchargers even being called in.
Ooh, wow. Well, with the Supercharger in play, Chopper's able to get the Storm Arrows into the waiting arms of the Orisa, and that buys Regen a huge amount of space to start to push up. We are just over a minute on the clock here on the offense for BNE, and they've got to beat Regen back around the corner and off the cart, and it's a difficult ask.
Yeah, Micro's had to go onto the Zenyatta as well because you simply cannot field a team going into a Zenyatta without a Zenyatta of your own to match that Discord Orb. And the amount it does to really pressure that shielding your tanks as well.
Ship coming up on the Gravitic Flux, won't use it just yet, but the Dragon not only splits the team, but finds the Baptiste, taking Bizer out of the fight. Chopper able to find one into the head onto Zib and take him out of the fight. Now, down to the final 35 seconds of the fight. No ultimates on the board here for BNE, and a Regen sitting on a Flux and an Amplification Matrix. It's going to be very difficult for BNE to crack this one.
Yeah, in fact, Regen, they're going to be hitting that support ultimate as well. Magic Maple, 43%. A little bit above Micro because he swapped first. So if you're BNE, you've only got that Immortality field to deal with the Sigma Flux, and you can bait it out of your Regen with an Amplification Matrix of your own.
Bob out early, will trade his life for it, but Cool ABC with that is able to get the double. Down goes Dunweir. We'll see the Sigma tap onto the point, but Ship able to find that with the rock, and that is it. That is done. BNE going no further on King's Row.
Yeah, they managed to get it into C though, and so that is something, because if you defend if you want to take any part of King's Row and you get denied that choke before Street's Phase, you take point C. Everyone loves to see it because it's just so hard for the attackers to actually commit back onto that payload if they lose a fight because you're so open. And if you've got something like an Orb of Discord that's going on to the head of everyone who can't hide behind the shield, and shields being as fragile as they are currently, you just find yourself already at half your force before you even get to see that payload.
I mean, I was sort of looking at the Zen and going, oh, if they're running double shield, you're never going to be able to get an Orb of Discord on anybody. And yet, Magic Meatball was putting out so much pressure as the Zen that Micro was forced to match him. And we ended up in a really weird mirror matchup towards the end of the fight when you consider what we saw our two teams going out with on the offense and defense. Speaking of defense, BNE's turn to see how far they can take this one. And Zip going to be coming out on the top here, which we have seen him play already in this map.
This is the prediction. This is the how to deal with Chopper. Because we talked about it. This was what these guys fielded when Chopper was being a problem on their defense on that Genji. And now that you've got the champion on the defense himself, he has the time to be able to set these turrets up in really horrible places that forces Regen to deal with that first buying time off their bank before they can even try to contest that point.
Looks like we've had a little bit of early information there for Regen. They're just going to go straight for this more shield-breaky composition. Chopper back onto the other Shimada brother here, so a lot of pick potential. Hulk comes out, but can't find any combos. The shield's there from Ship to stop the follow-through. See Zib rotating here. Turret in the far window, so Regen are going to have to deal with a couple of different angles here. Sonic Arrow out for a bit of info from Chopper, but doesn't give him too much. Great positioning here from him, though. Can afford just to pepper in the damage and look for those headshots. He's only going to find one to buy a massive advantage for his team in this. Turret's going to go down first. Visor caught out a little bit in no man's land. Has to invest the immortality field. A lot of his team low. Has to turn and focus the high ground position, but can't do enough to keep his team alive. Chopper, Ship, all the rest of Regen just plowing through BNE's defense.
It's the pincer movement. Regen, they take all of the angles. They take hotel, they take point, and they take statue. And so if you're BNE, which way do you turn? You can't ignore the Hanzo because he's going to headshot your supports. You can't ignore the rest of the team in front of you because they're going to plow through your front line. And they can't deal with any of them, and so they end up losing the point in that first fight. Worse, you can't defend it choke because Regen have already moved up and set up an Orisa shield in front of it.
Well, they will at least get that amplification matrix out and ready to go, which has pushed Regen back away from the choke, and Zip's on a bit of a cheeky flank here. At the very least, we'll get info in case anybody tries to outflank him. Chopper's going to be coming in with the Dragon Strike ready to go. Doesn't look like he's going to need it. Magic Meatball able to get one. In fact, the supports here from Regen starting to frag out a little bit. DPS, watch your positions. These guys might be coming for them, and that is an easy offensive win here for Regen.
So CJ had the amplification matrix, and he was able to use it in the middle of a fight as opposed to Beza, who had amplification matrix but was forced into a corner and had to drop it to allow BNE the chance to hold at choke. And so Regen, they just disengaged. They waited out, and before the payload rounds the corner, amplification matrix is gone, they can set up their own, and BNE have nothing to field against it. And now they have nothing really to field against Regen, as Chopper's just waiting with this Dragon Strike. You don't need a Graviton, you don't need a Signal Flux, you just need Lava's have old-fashioned pulp to find value and get a pick.
Ship did find a bit of value there with the Gravitic Flux, stop the recon test coming through, and the kills do not stop coming for Regen. And they've not got to push it far, they've got to get around that second corner. You see Chopper with the Sonic Arrow looking for some information as to where to throw this Dragon Strike. Has an idea of where they might be coming from, backs out for now. But this is going to do so much to stop any offensive push. And cool ABC on the high ground with the bomb into the back line. Chopper finds one. We will get the Transcendence out. It overlaps with the Gravitic Flux, so no value out of that. Chopper, one with the Dragon. Magic Meatball finding one as well. Torb turret not going to be sufficient to round that out, and a very quick King's Row for Regen, taking us to even Stevens in the series.
So we talked about how BNE had to swap Micro into the Zenyatta on point C when Regen put a Zenyatta in of their own. That was the difference. That was what we got to see. If a team doesn't have a Zen, you just don't have the sustain, you don't have the aggression that can stand up to your enemy, because Magic Maple, he had the Transcendence. You might have had a rally, but a rally, it can be ripped away. Transcendence, it stays unless you've got an anti-nade, and it's going to keep an entire team alive through a Dragon Strike, through a Sigma Flex, through even a Molten Core and above. All of these things that BNE had ultimates to fall back onto, Regen could just cancel it out with one thing, one push of a button from that Zen.
It's really unfortunate. It's the power that a Zen brings to a composition like this. You know, it's very much baked into the character design. One hand giveth, one hand taketh away. And I just thought genuinely incredibly great level of play there from Regen. When we think that on Rialto, on Li Jiang, we saw this be incredibly close for 2 out of the 3 rounds. Regen just completely decimated BNE. Like, they hardly stopped. I think there was one team fight they maybe kind of half lost on the streets phase of King's Row. And the rest of the time, it was just plain sailing for these guys. And it makes me wonder, you know, BNE, have we maybe overestimated them just on the back of a win on Li Jiang?
So BNE, they struggled with their composition because they didn't have a clear win condition, right? Some ultimates that we talk about and that we see coming up from heroes are just immediate stop a fight, win a fight. Things like Graviton, things like Blizzard, all of this stuff that you just throw in EMP to an extent as well. Throw in guarantees you a team fight, guarantees that you can stop a payload, guarantees that you can cut a team's momentum off. BNE didn't have that. They had the Sigma Flux, which can be cancelled by an Immortality Field. They had a Bob, which can be cancelled by just killing the Bob and removing him from the table, or, you know, an Immortality Field. And that was what BNE were constantly struggling against. They didn't have pressure on the backline. So every single time they threw an ultimate in, Regen could just cancel it out with a 25-second cooldown. They didn't even need to use the Transcendence until point C.
I feel, Moxie, and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, but it feels like BNE are playing a very responsive game. They're not playing very proactively. They're waiting for Regen to do something and then making the swaps or making the changes in pathing or making the ultimate response in regard to what Regen have just done, and they're not making too many aggressive decisions for themselves.
I mean, they did make one aggressive decision. Unfortunately, it was far too aggressive, throwing that amplification matrix onto B. They did it far too early. You want to win choke by having a fight that you win, because it forces a team properly back into spawn, buys you the time. It's not a simple disengage where you buy 10 seconds and then they're immediately back in your face. But it's going to be a new map now. It's going to be Rialto, and this is one of my personal favorites in all of Overwatch, not just because it looks pretty, not just because I played Orisa once and got a 5k halt into the river. No, it's because this is a true test of DPS skill. This is the map where Crossfire is at its most important.
When you look at the sort of underlying geometry of Rialto, I feel like the read coming out from Denthead here is maybe a little better with the sight lines available for the Widowmaker and the pick potential, but there's a lot of spam damage here for Regen, and 2 very different approaches in DPS, so not going to be a level matchup on DPS skill here, Moxie. Going to be a little bit of a slanted playing field.
Well, it's going to be slanted as well when it comes to supports, because Micro is going to be constantly up there trying to pocket Sib, which means Magic Maple with those Discords can come in clutch for Regen. And the damage, the difference that you're going to be seeing between these DPS gets even wider.
Ooh, Chopper takes a bit of a dink there from a boosted rocket from Zip. Has to get out of the way, and the pressure that this Barret is putting down means that Regen are having to back out of the way and take an early hold here at the square, maybe a little bit ahead of where they would have liked to. Now Denthead has a much cleaner line in, now Zib has a lot more space to play with, and between the two of them, they've got a couple of early kills and are likely to get a lot of progress here on point A on Rialto. We'll see another kill coming through there from the Orisa, and Denthead able to just machine gun Kelly down their opposition. And you're going to see Dusk pushing up here to slow down the recontest.
There's just no pressure on this Widow at the moment. It's all going on to that Pharah cool ABC trying to get that 1 DPS, but that means Denthead gets a free playing field to just pepper all of these shots in. And BNE, they might not even be able to get this recontest, especially with that amplification matrix, before they even get to see the payload.
Yeah, amplification matrix. Oh my ease. Chopper lined up the shot and just got absolutely demolished by a rocket boosted, not just by the Mercy, but by the amplification matrix. That is a big old stop sign in the middle of the points.
Okay, if you're Regen, you need to use Chopper's Dragon Strike, and then you need to swap. There is nothing that counters an enemy Widow quite like fielding a Widowmaker of your own. Because the Hanzo, he has many jobs. He has to get the shield, he has to get the tanks, he has to try and deal with the other DPS. A Widow is just focused on getting picks. She doesn't care about shield break, she just goes for heads.
Jack of all trades, master of none. Dented looking for an acrobatic pick there, but can't find it. Oh, Zib overcooked that one a little bit. Didn't get as high as he might have liked, and Barrage mostly himself. But Dented is able to get an equalizer with cool ABC now out of the fight. There was a res available for Micro, but he couldn't invest it onto Zib. I'm going to see the Flux coming out now as well from Ship. But Chopper's finally able to find some value with the Hanzo, able to get the double now one with a melee kill as well. Now, Ship, toe-to-toe with his opposite number, finds the rock onto Dust, and by tying up the main tanks, he buys a huge amount of space, but it's going to be Zip that capitalizes, getting the double. Gravitic Flux now out from Ship, looking to find something with that, but can't. Dented away in the back once again with the Widowmaker, able to find cool ABC. But this looks like he's starting to stabilize at least a little bit here for Regen. They've been holding out this corner for quite some time. Ultimates have been invested by BNE, but so far they've found a whole bunch of not all that much, and he dives right into the line of fire of the Widowmaker. Chopper with the swap over onto the Widow, able to find a lot of value on that one. Up onto the high ground, grabbed into the line of fire, takes a huge amount of damage and has to back out, take a less aggressive positioning. Dented now has control of the boxes, looks for the tap up but can't find it. Dented somehow sent away into the back, and the fight looks like it's leveling out a little bit here for Regen.
Well, not if you're BNE right now. Supercharges are in, and Zip is so close to that barrage. But do you want to use it? Dust's investing the Sigma Flux, but he gets stunned.
That's really unfortunate. We will see Ship die with the Flux ready to go as well, but even with Dusk not able to find anything with that Gravitic Flux, we're still seeing a huge amount of value out here from the DPS line of B&E. Payload still grinding inexorably forwards, even with Chopper doing his best to find these kills. Dunweir now with the aggressive positioning of the shield, able to push forward and start to claim some space for the cart to roll in slowly behind him. You'll see the Flux now lift them all off of the cart, but that was a beautiful stun onto Ship, means that didn't accumulate into too much value. Zib able to find Magic Mate Ball, and the barrage in at close range in particular to CJ, who's starting to frag out just that little bit, finding the double, and now it's Chopper trying to go toe-to-toe here with Dented, cool ABC chasing them around, and a last-minute hold for Regen.
And swaps we're going to be seeing coming out from BNE, because if you lose the fight, if you've got to try and go over this bridge, the Pharah is just too out in the open, especially if you're going up against Chopper, who has got free reign in the sky right now. And cool ABC so close to that duplication. With BNE just swapping a micro onto that Brigadier, you're not going to have a rally up, so it's all going to be on Beza to have that Immortality Field out, so Regen can take advantage of this. If they bait that Batiste into using Immortality Field early, you can punish them, or you can just pick up Zip's head.
Well, I mean, that's one way to ensure that cool ABC is definitely going to win that charge war, is just taking Zib out of the fight straight away, and with that one player advantage, Regen, they push their luck, they push their way up, and Dented going to have to take a long, slow rotation to find some sort of angle to play on. And now these guys are going to be holding for Regen this high ground position, which if you are a fan of Overwatch in the UK, you will know with some certainty how difficult this is to get past.
Well, if you're a Batiste, you are going to know how difficult it is to keep a hold of your Immortality Field. With BNE being so close to that Sigma Flux and Supercharges, and Regen holding onto this duplication, there's a question of which Batiste is going to go down first. Regen have control of that high ground, so it's going to be a lot easier for them to keep that Batiste safe and away from the action. BNE have to get Beza safely in to actually be able to throw the Frisbee down.
We'll see them aggressing on the high ground for now, but they are going to be coming into the duplicate, and they're not far off Magic Mate Ball having the rally. 30 seconds left on the clock, so means they've got to get in and find something in the final 30 seconds. Supercharger immediately taken out again, and it's going to be cool ABC away in the back, getting the Flux in a fraction of a second, slamming them all down. only able to get one with Micro going down. Dusk down as well. Cool ABC with this duplicate has done so much. Able to take down the Baptiste as well. We are down into the final 7 seconds. There's nobody left alive from BNE, and this is where the push is likely to die for them.
Yeah, Micro's onto the Lucio, but he can't even touch. And even if you had managed to get a touch on, Lava was just waiting with that supercharges, and you still had an amplification matrix to call on. That's so much damage being amplified. Nothing would have allowed you to survive the pure eradication that would be happening on that payload.
It's really unfortunate. BNE looked so good all the way through point A, and they almost got it through to point B, but by the end they'd had that gap reduced to a measly halfway through point B. What was it that changed? What was the adaptation that Regen made that really allowed them to make that comeback?
So it wasn't a sort of adaptation. Chopper going onto the Widowmaker finally put Denthead into check. Suddenly the Widowmaker was not just able to free shoot. But what really happened was BNE unfortunately overcommitted in a couple of fights. Ultimates that shouldn't have been used. Zib, that barrage that far is going to be going back with their head in their hands, because that could have been huge. You could have denied Regen presence on that high ground where the defense really wants to be standing. But not only did you deny your presence, you denied a very strong ultimate that you could have used to just break open that defense. And you put your team in a horrible place where suddenly you had to swap off, you had to build up an ultimate yet again. But it was unfortunately the immortality fields. Phaser in that last fight threw an immortality field far too early, so Cool ABC was able to get the Sigma Flux through and able to convert it into picks. So basically he just has to get these immortality field throwdowns into check, and then BNE, especially now with Micro sticking with this Mercy, it's all going to be down to this Baptiste to keep that front line alive. If he's able to get those in check, then the team should be able to prosper.
It's a very powerful ability with a very long cooldown. It's unforgiving if you can't quite get that. You see Cool ABC coming out here on the Echo, doing a good job of playing out of the line of sight of Denthead, who has gone all the way into the back, knows that the team will very quickly be retreating to defend here in the far distance of the square. Chopper's going to make a swap of his own, but it's going to be Ship rotating along round behind where BNE were encamped. Finds them taking Baser out of the fight. The res won't quite come through either as Lava knocks down Micro from the fight. And this is looking just as good, if not better, of a point A offense from Regen that we saw from BNE.
Chopper's just seeing if they can manage to get a pick. Zip is very quickly going to change onto the Echo and Micro onto this and Yada, so you can take advantage of the fact that your support is going to be doing a lot more damage than Regen's. The Brigitte being that means that you bolster your tank's health bar and the aggression that they can go for.
Ooh,
but you don't
Lava!
If Lava gets a double hole!
Oh man, Lava with a triple as well. You saw Denthead away on the far edge of the point B open space here at the front, looking for a pick and couldn't find it. Chopper kept him in check all the way through that, and it bought Lava all the space in the world.
And it bought them the supercharges to use as well. Regen already seeing that rectangle glowing as Denthead swaps onto the Hanzo, has to build up Dragon Strike so quickly.
Man, this is aggressive, and the supercharger is out already. They can stand here and rotate in and out, spam for days behind these shields, and be a constant, consistent threat, and buy a lot of ult charge. Now we get the amplification matrix. We're going to get that double damage action in over the top. Ship now at 90%, but being lapped now by Dusk, who had the Gravitic Flux ready to go, but can't find anything with it. We're going to see Chopper down. Cool ABC with the duplicate onto the Sigma themselves, looking for enough damage here to generate a Gravitic Flux. This looking like that might not come through. As we see BNE finally start to mount some sort of defense here, it's going to be Zib on the high ground with Denthead popping back in through the shield on the Hanzo to round out that fight and mark a defense here for BNE.
Denthead was able to build up Dragon Strike in that fight. And now it's going to be up to Dunmer to get this Hulk going through, because it doesn't necessarily need to buy you the picks, it just needs to put CJ under the amount of pressure needed to put in Immortality Field. But you pop it so early! Regen can just wait this one out until it goes away, and BNE have thrown away one of their best cards of prolonging their defense.
The one thing that it has done is it has just put Zib over the edge into having this duplicate ready to go, but it's not really done much to reset the rest of that ult economy. They've now got to rely on some pretty pixel perfect ultimates to really keep this defense rolling.
Micro is going to be so close to that Transcendence that Zenyatta's going to be really pressing Q quite rapidly. But
Wow.
it's not going to be rapid enough though, the team's just falling.
Yeah, this is really unfortunate. Shift's able to get a double. Still alive in the fight. Yes, they have lost Chopper here, but Chopper is really about threat at this point, and they've got so much point presence. BNE are just nowhere to be seen. The tanks are pushing in. We get a Dragon over the point, hasn't found a kill. Has allowed Micro to tag in on the Zenyatta just to stop that cart rolling that little bit further. And now, Stormbow comes through from Denhead, will get one pick on the back of that, and once more BNE have just by the skin of their teeth squeaked back onto the cart and ready to go. Here's the duplicate now from Zip. Might have been a little bit late in the game for this, as Regen are already starting to back their way out of this team fight. We're unlikely to see that Gravitic Flux coming online.
We will see it in this next fight though, because Micro used that Transcendence build to keep the payload within contesting distance for the team. And now you don't have it to go up against Ship or Lava.
Oh! Wow, that is a big opener. Chopper in on the Tracer. Incredibly susceptible even to a body shot here from Hanzo with the Orb of Discord in over the top. CJ finds the equalizer. Here's the duplicate from Cool ABC. Gonna pick up the Reinhardt. Gonna throw with the hammer. Gonna put 3 on the ground and swing through them to take them out of the fight. Here's a Flux as well as Cool ABC. Closes the distance onto the enemy. Zenyatta takes them out and they roll that payload through, putting Regen at match point.
Oh, Regen, they had so much time left in the bank, and BNE had to commit so many ultimates to making sure that payload did not hit the finish line in the fight before. They just didn't have anything left in the canister when it came to charge. And unfortunately, Regen were just able to wait them out and then take control of the payload when it mattered.
That was really a bit of a masterclass there from Regen. But some serious missteps from BNE. I think you made a very good point of it. Having used that supercharger so early, without really the benefit of them being able to generate ultimates on the back of it, felt like a big misplay from Lava.
So they wanted to buy time. Because you put it on bridge, you know that a team is just going to disengage and wait it out. You've got side rooms, you've got walls, you're going to be safe from them. And you were buying time to let your Zenyatta hit that Transcendence, so you would have a safety blanket for when ultimates come out, but unfortunately, you don't have it up in time. And Regen, they really aggressing quite quickly after that superchargers ran out, so quickly that BNE were not prepared for it. The team gets split, half of them end up on the low ground, half of them end up on the high ground in that side room, and the Zenyatta, even if he's hurriedly mashing Q, his ult charge is just 96, 97, 98, team's dead.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and no matter how hard and how quickly you press that ultimate button, it really won't come alive until you've done the damage, despite the fact that it might feel like you're just helping inch your way closer and closer to having it on board and ready to go. But Moxie, this is now match point, and Regen are looking so strong. They're playing quick, they're playing aggressive, they're playing decisively, and as we move over onto our control map, those are all of the properties that you need to really sweep this kind of map up.
Yeah, Volskaya going to be setting Regen up for what could be match point in this first of 3 series. And we think back to what they ran on Rialto, you can get away with that same DPS lineup on Volskaya, even if you're attacking or defending Widowmaker, if Chopper is there just constantly being a threat, making sure that BNE are preoccupied trying to deal with that DPS or figure out where he is before they get to turn around to the team. That is going to be critical in allowing you safe passage onto that point.
It kind of feels like almost like a Colosseum, like, you know, that you've got this extended high ground with a pit down in the middle where a Widowmaker can just stand up away in the background like some sort of Roman emperor giving the thumbs up or the thumbs down as they dink headshots in. Very powerful pick here, and one of the better maps for watching sort of the Widow mind games and the chasing of each other around the point. So could be a really good option for both of these teams.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing coming into how teams set up around that Volskaya defense as well. We're seeing a lot less focus based around choke fight when it comes to DPS. It's much more about you have someone a little bit further away on that high ground that you talked about, someone like a Widowmaker, a Hanzo, or an Ashe, so that you do have the line of sight onto choke, but it's very hard for you yourself to actually be taken out of the fight. And then the rest of your team, they don't need necessarily to be right in that choke. They can be a little bit closer to points. So if things start turning a little bit pear-shaped for them, you can go into the side room or you can fall back onto the point itself and have a little bit of extra cover, as opposed to just being absolutely curb stomped the moment someone rolls on through with a Lucio, Reinhardt, and Zarya.
Well, only a couple of seconds out before finding out what we've got coming up on the defense here, and maybe not the Widowmaker matchup that we were looking at, but you know, the Ashe, kind of a more utilitarian Widowmaker. It doesn't have the range, but has a few other more interesting options at their disposal.
And a much more interesting ultimate as well. Infrasight, well, it's nice to see through walls, you know, and it gives you a lot of information on where a team is going to be coming through. A lot of players already know where a team's going to be coming through. They can predict it because Overwatch has been out for so darn long now that you don't need to see through walls to set that up. And so Ashe can come through with Bob, and Bob, while he doesn't always pick up kills, still pulls out a lot of utility from the other side to actually shut him down. And not only that, he can go on to point, he can contest it, he can be that pressure, and you don't have that punishment of losing a player to a spawn room.
Well, on the defense, we're going to see Cool ABC taking a little bit of an aggressive position here, looking for some early charge with sticky bombs, but can't find it. Rotation through onto the left-hand room. Coming out for BNE, they're going to want to go and attempt to dislodge this entrenched high ground position, but they're going to be coming from a small corridor to a large open space, and that could be a tricky transition to make.
Beza on that Zen as well, he needs that open space, he doesn't want to be caught out vulnerable in this corridor.
That's going to be the Immortality field out from BNE, and a huge amount of damage in over the top. Means that the DPS lineup is already looking a little bit shaky. Chopper and Cool ABC able to get a double there. And that attack from BNE halted with a minute lost in its execution.
Oh, Micro goes down. You do manage to get ships, so main tank out of the way for Regen, but Cool ABC, Chopper, Magic Maple all pull their weight into the kill feed. And BNE, they burned off even more time in the bank. They don't want to be moving into the small corridor up steps. You can see because they don't have a Lucio to try and breach the distance with that speed boost. And as soon as Beza goes into that close quarters, he loses a lot of value. He becomes extremely vulnerable to Chopper's dynamite. And so you want to try and force the open fight, but Regen are so entrenched on this high ground that you're going to be so reluctant. The only way you're going to be able to unseat them is to move to the point itself.
I feel like you can kind of judge how this fight's going so far by just looking at DPS ultimate charge. Cool ABC and Chopper both have theirs online. Denthead, Zib, still some work to be done to get these going as they rotate on to the right-hand side, the opposing high ground. They will catch Ship a little bit unawares. He's going to have to back out fairly quickly behind his shield. You see Cool ABC taking an aggressive position over the top, and the Amp Matrix out already. Double the damage. TNT in over the top, and here is the duplicate already taken apart. Cool ABC finding nothing with that. And now Ship with the flux ready to go, sees the hole, waits for it to connect and goes in, but brings himself into the line of fire of the Bob from Denthead that they did not see come up online, which means that that flux hole combo yielded effectively nothing.
Beza has Transcendence, so if BNE get back into the side room, they can pop it out, but you might just want to hold on to it.
Transcendence traded out for Bob here. Beza buys some time for his team. There's going to be Zib coming through with a duplicate. Picks up the Sigma, unsurprisingly. Huge damage potential, huge ult potential here. 77% and climbing a couple more orbs. We'll see them in a position to bring that flux to bear. Gets stunned, can't find anything out of it. That's now 2 duplicates for 2 echoes, finding 2 big fat zeros. Lava's able to take the Tracer out of the fight, but Beza's starting to frag back now. CJ no longer in a position to fight. Dunwich pops the supercharger, and by playing over here in the garage, they buy themselves a huge defensive advantage. The supercharger was protected, and so were BNE.
But BNE don't have that snowball potential. They don't have any ultimates to bring onto point B. And Regen, they're going to be coming into a whole host of them for BNE get even a sniff of 50%.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And Denthead's looking to make the swap here onto the Widow. I'd be surprised if he sticks with this, honestly. Yeah, there we go.
You don't want to. You go for the Widow so you can try and put a little bit of pressure onto the sidelines and force Chopper away from dealing with your team with those dynamites, with breaking that shield. But now that you need that option of the Ashe, you want to take the high ground, you want to have a little bit more mobility in case you get jumped on by Cool ABC, the Ashe is just the optimal pick.
Well, not a terrible time back here for the point B offense for BNE, but right now they don't have any ultimates to make this happen. We're going to see a couple of dry and painful pushes from these guys. In the meantime, Regen looking to really start to rank up the interest on the ults they have in the bank. We'll of course have the Bob ready to go, and BNE playing very slowly at the minute, Moxie.
Well, they have to because Den had swapped off the Ash, remember? So your ultimate got reset to 0.
Oh, that's going to be a difficult one. Ship able to find Zip. Dusk, I've got to assume that's a hard reset there from Dusk rather than a unintentional step off the side. In fact, given the way that everything else has gone, that's a full reset from BNE.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to be giving away a full tank's health bar to the other side. And look at what they've managed to do. Regen, they were close to a couple of ultimates in the last fight, sure, but they still haven't hit them because of that reset. If Ship had been able to get that kill onto Dusk or Tumir, you'd already have a Sigma Flux, and Lava would be at least 70% of the way to that supercharges. So you've evened the playing field just a little bit more. And with Micro going to be a lot closer to that amplification matrix, you should be able to even it just a little bit less when it comes to Regen's ultimate coming. You might be able to run away with a nicely placed amplification matrix, setting up Dunmir to get a supercharger from the blink of an eye.
I'm looking at the matchup here between the Gravitic Flux from Ship and Pfizer just coming up with that Transcendence. That's kind of an equalizer. That's a big old chess move, one for the other on this one. It's going to be cool ABC that starts things off in this big ult exchange. Picks up the Sigma, immediately gets the Flux, going for the blind Flux. And here's the second duplicate, and no surprises, it's going to be another Sigma. We very nearly had 4 Sigmas on the field at the same time there, Moxie. Zip struggling a little more to find the damage value they might like here. Bias is going to come in with the Transcendence. Might have missed time that as the Flux comes through. Takes out 1. Zip unable to find anything with the duplicates. And now puts themselves right into the line of fire of Chopper, who's going to be coming out of that with most of a bob to show for it.
Yeah, it's all about Beza, unfortunately, putting in that Transcendence just a little bit too early. Ship waits for the perfect moment for it to run out before putting in that Sigma Flux, and it gets kills, and it chips away at health bars. But if you're BNE, you've got 40 seconds left on the clock. You've got a couple of ultimates to come in with, and you don't have to bait out a Transcendence from the other side. It's just CJ standing in your way with that Immortality field, because while Magic Maple's Rally can be really nice in cushioning up health bars, it doesn't quite stand up to the power of gravity when you get chunked down from below.
No, sadly, not much can get in the way of Mother Gravity, but cool ABC closing in on yet another duplicate with 20 seconds left to go on the clock. In fact, another couple of salvos like that, and that may see them have that ready to go. Lava, now with the supercharger, just buys a little more time for this second recon test to come through. It means that BNE are going to push this right few into the last few seconds. They've already lost 2 members of the team. Cool ABC will be knocked out of the duplicate, but it doesn't matter because Regen, the rest of the team, have done enough now to secure the picks that they needed, and that is going to be a shutout on point B for BNE. Regen, they've got to cap point A and just a little smidge of point B, and that is them taking the series.
So BNE went for a little bit of the mirror matchup aside from that support lineup, the Zen versus the Brigitte. And Zen can be extremely strong in putting in a lot of pressure onto a team when it comes to shielding. And Zen mixed up with a Baptiste is terrifying to think about in terms of the DPS that you can output. But what it doesn't really do is survive that fight when it becomes really close quarters. That's something where a Brigitte just flourishes. Because if you've got a Brigitte on your side, if you're a Reinhardt or an Arista or a Sigma, you know that you can press W and that you're going to be safe with that AoE. Zenyatta, when he comes under pressure within a meter, he's dead. He's back in spawn room.
It's really unfortunate. It's the huge advantage of having that AoE healing, and of course of the over armor that you've got available when you're playing as Brigitte, is you can effectively, for a given value of Immortal, make your teammates immortal. Like, you can bail them out of so many situations. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, how much HP was it that Jonak was able to reach?
Oh, lordy.
Which was absolutely terrifying when I saw the number with all of that overarm. I think that was actually what just prompted Blizzard to hit the quick takeaway.
Stop praying for
HP
Jonak.
armor. It's strong enough as it is. It's not a nerf to Brigitte, it's a nerf to Jonak. But as it is, it's going to be BNE. They need to win this. They need to hold Regen away from picking up point B if they want to have a chance at continuing this series. And they're doing it, so it's
I see what's happening here. In fact, not only the sim strat, we're sending Regen, for the most part, over the side. They're all over, and I think Cool ABC is going to go and change back. Yeah, there we go. Over on to the Echo. BNE know that they're there, and they're just waiting for them to pull the trigger. They maybe don't know about this wrinkle. So, Cool ABC playing from one side, the rest of Regen playing for the other. hammer into Anvil is what they're looking for here, and Regen have already taken that high ground position. The rock from Ship interrupted by the shield from Dusk. But Regen already on the point and ready to go. They're not taking this high ground position. They just want to come and play in this little bunker down at the bottom of the point. They've got a defensive position, and Cool ABC gets the first pick of the exchange. Ship's going to equalize that, though.
And they're already the DPS, all of the damage that BNE could provide is getting so much value right now.
Oh, no. Wow, Beza got a massive pick there. Cool ABC was getting maybe a little bit overconfident, overstayed their welcome, and took a lot of damage in that. So Cool ABC may have got the entry frag on this one, but it all fell apart for Regen thanks to Beza.
And Magic Mabel is behind enemy lines right now. They've been found out. They're on full retreat, and they don't get punished, Phil. They're still inside them. They're separated from the team, but the Brigadier is not dead yet.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate because now she is up in range of the enemy Zenyatta. Beza in a bit of trouble, and anybody in range of the whip shot without the ability to fly also in trouble. And now we've got the high ground position coming out from Regen here as well. Amplification Matrix up, obviously not in a position to allow that to come on to Zib, but Cool ABC takes him out anyway. And now this is a 5-minute time bank for point B.
Not punishing that Brigida was absolutely crucial in why they lost that. It's not old Brigida, right? You're not terrified to go 1 versus 1 against her. She's got a dinky little shield, and she's going to hit you in the face for maybe a little bit of damage, but you should still be able to get it down. The fact that she was able to stay alive and get back to her team, that BNE weren't able to roll over a team lacking a support, lacking that AoE. Beza's got a Transcendence. You need to have it in the tank for when Chopper comes through with this Bob, but that's just going to set the stage for Ship and Love to come in with these ultimates, and a Transcendence being gone.
Well, that's the Bob early out from Chopper right into the back line, but he gets the Orb of Discord and has a lot of damage into him already, but he's going to survive through this. They can't afford to turn and focus him. Chopper's able to get one already, but Zib up in the high ground has picked up the Brigitte, will get focused out of it, but back into the much more deadlier form of the Echo. We'll see the kill come through onto Ship, but Cool ABC still starting to frag out, and that is it. That is it. They are done. They didn't need even a minute of that 5-minute time bank. Regen finally coming to 3 in the series and walking away the winner of this exchange.
This era, it's both the second coming of the Genji and also all supports must die. They must use the ultimate far too early. This is the old bait and switch, Phil. You thought you needed to use Transcendence for this. Our actual play, we'll put it out as soon as that runs out. That's exactly what happens in all of these maps. BNE's support lineup were put through the absolute ringer today. And unfortunately, they were stuck in a catch-22. You have to use Transcendence, you have to use Immortality Field to see these threats away from you, but just as quickly as those threats disappear, new ones pop up and replace them, and you've got nothing to cancel them out with.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing that we might be seeing here, obviously, you know, the meta has its own implications. Regen, from what we know about them, from the fact that you and I have both seen them in previous tournaments, is we might just be seeing the advantage of a more seasoned and experienced team. They have this better handle on what the right rotations are, what the right picks are, that maybe BNE is still working on.
Well, I mean, I would say to a point, yes, but BNE, this series was extremely close in that first round. In Lijiang, it was even Stevens between both of these guys. And even parts of King's Row sometimes looked very strong for BNE, where they had a grasp of what they needed to do. They just had the timings a little bit wrong. The right ideas, the wrong executions. So they may not be as seasoned, but once they get that experience under their belt, going forward, they should be very strong, and everyone they meet should be very worried.
And of course, this isn't the end of what we're going to see out from either of these two teams. This is, of course, the group stages. BNE have some other matches to play. Maybe they can work their way up to the top and come out into the playoffs stages. That's all yet to be determined. That is, however, all that we got from these two teams for today. Which really just leaves us to move to think about what our next matchup is going to be. And Moxie, I've got to admit, I'm excited for this next one. Avoided are a team that I have seen playing for quite a while now and have never had the chance to cast. And for me, they are the spiritual successor for my own personal contenders, darling team, sadly defunct Clockwork Vendetta. So I'm very excited for this next matchup.
And I mean, they're going to be properly put for their paces as well. They're going to be meeting Nocturnal, so stay tuned, guys. That's going to be coming up in just a little bit. And Phil, I'm as excited as you because I haven't got to see either of these guys play since that patch has dropped. So maybe it's shaken up their compositions. Maybe they are just going to stick with what they've been finding value with because Avoided, as you pointed out, they have this sort of set composition that these guys play and that they stick to and you either are able to deal with it or you go a little bit crazy from trying to figure out why that's there, why is that in that position, why that ultimate is going on through, and why you're suddenly being bashed around. It's quite something, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly taking a long time for some teams to figure out how this one is going. But I do believe that before we are ready to get into that, we're going to have to take a little bit of a break as we have to wait for a few other things to come into the offing and get our teams into the lobby. But we should have some entertainment coming up for you to bridge that gap. So don't go too far. Keep your eyes glued to the screen. We'll be back after, hopefully, not too long a break.